Welcome to tonight's episode of Late Night Baking. I am a huge fan of Dune. I read the book when I was 12, and I've read it about 12 times since then. I got the brand new 4K transfer of David Lynch's movie, even though I don't even own a 4K player. I am dressed in my Halloween costume of a still suit, also from Lynch's movie, and of course, most importantly, you can't spell Atreides without Reed. So we're very excited for the release of Denis Villeneuve's new version of Dune. So tonight, to celebrate, we're going to make sandworm bread. To start, get 2 tablespoons of yeast. Yes, 2 tablespoons. It's a big worm. Usul is called a big one. Add that to a big bowl. Follow with 1.5 cups of warm water. And now to feed the yeast, 1 tablespoon of sugar. And give that a whisk. And let that boil up. After it started to puff up, add 1/2 cup of brown sugar. There we go. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Now, everyone who's read Dune knows that the spice melange is always described as smelling like cinnamon. So let's just, to honor the book, let's just make it a little more than 1 tablespoon. And then 3 eggs. 1, 2, 3, and whisk it up. Then after you whisk it up, it should smell delicious, but this nose plug's sort of interfering. I'm just going to take that out. Oh yeah, there we go. Delicious. It smells like spice. Now next you're going to need about 7 cups of bread flour. But you're going to add half of that first. So I'm going to have, that's 2 cups, 3 cups, and 3.5. Then get half a stick of melted but cooled butter. Add that on. Followed by the second half of the bread flour. So another 2 cups, 3 cups, and 3.5 for a nice 7, which is 1 more Dune book than Frank wrote. But now the fun part, mix it up with your hands. And if you don't have a KitchenAid, then just knead it by hand for a good solid 10 minutes. But be careful, knead without rhythm, so you won't attract the worm. It's actually a lot easier to do it on a counter. Whew. Kneading dough without a KitchenAid is very tiring, but it's a good thing a still suit recycles a body's sweat because I am thirsty now. But you're gonna take your dough, put it back in the bowl, cover it with a towel, and let it rise for about an hour. Walk without rhythm. And we're back. First we're going to make the filling. So get a small bowl, throw in 3/4 cups, is that 3/4 cups? 3/4 cups of brown sugar. 2 tablespoons of pumpkin pie spice. 1, 2, and because there hasn't been enough spice already, throw in another solid tablespoon of cinnamon. And mix that all together. Get the chunks out of it. Then set that aside. And take your dough and let's see if it's risen. Whew. As the Reverend Mother would say, kul wahad. That is a beautiful ball of dough. So we're going to go ahead and punch it. Then flour your surface. Transfer the dough. And start rolling. Now for this, you want to get into a vaguely triangle shape, and by that I just mean straight line here and have them start to taper off together towards the back. So just try and get that shape going. Once you have it flat and, again, vaguely in that shape, you're going to grab some slivered almonds, and along the long edge, you're just going to start poking them in. It's going to take a while. There we go, thanks to my cameraman for helping me. Next, you're going to get about half a stick of melted butter and just sort of paint it all along. Oop, that's a chunk, it'll melt, that's okay. Spread it out along the length of the dough. And once that's all spread out, grab the sugar and spice combination, pour that along, and again use your brush to once it's all spread, it'll begin to take shape. Take one of the long ends and start to roll it. Now the body of Shai-Hulud takes shape. A little tip is to make a cone of foil and put it into the gaping maw of the sandworm to hold the mouth open while it bakes. Then put your sandworm onto a baking tray, just like that. Pinch the tail to make it official. Then I'm going to make some light slices just for detail, because as everyone knows, worms are covered in ridges and scales, and to ride a worm, you take a maker hook and force it under a ridge. And because sand is so irritating and it gets everywhere, a worm will turn, bringing the rider to the top of the worm. So that's why the ridges are very important. But after that, we're going to let the dough rise again for a second time. Not nearly as long as the first, but we're just going to come back to this in a little bit. Here we go, we didn't have to wait too long. Hopefully we won't have to wait too long for Denis Villeneuve's Part 2 either. But before we send this worm into the oven, we're going to crack an egg, get a teaspoon of vanilla, oops, oh well, and mix that together. And give the worm a nice egg bath. Then we're going to put our Shai-Hulud into the oven, 350 for 25 minutes. Get that. And while that's baking, we're going to make the glaze. So get a medium bowl. For the glaze, you're going to add 1 cup of powdered sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, then 1 teaspoon, quote unquote, of a little more cinnamon spice, and finally about 2 tablespoons of water. Or adjust it to the consistency you want. And stir it up. There it is. And Shai-Hulud emerges from the desert. Gods, what a monster. Now we're going to give him the glaze and recite the Fremen prayer. Bless the Maker and his water. Bless the coming and going of him. May his passage cleanse the world. May he keep the world for his people. You know, this turned out so well, it almost feels like a crime to cut it up. So before we massacre it, let's get a quick close-up of this. Massive body fit for the deep desert. And crisp knives lining his mouth. Now, the only way to actually kill a worm is with water, but my crisp knife might do the trick. So let's just cut ourselves a good slice of sandworm. And there you have a nice segment of soft, chewy, cinnamon, spicy sandworm bread fresh from Arrakis. But before I try this, if you've read the book or seen the deleted scenes from David Lynch's movie, you'll know that a crisp knife can only be put away after it's been blooded. So let me just pull a shadow mace real quick and just, there we go. Now, the actual taste test. Get that segment. It's soft, it's warm, it's yummy. It's got just enough cinnamon spice to be delicious. Not enough to help me see into the future, but that's okay. But if you want to see the future of Dune, then make sure you either see it in theaters or stream it on HBO Max so Denis Villeneuve can film part 2 of the book. Don't let the adaptation be hanging. But I hope you all enjoyed this delicious trip to Arrakis, and I hope you all have a good late night.